Welcome to Whatif tutorials. In this tutorial we are going to be looking at project activities reporting in the project costing module. Excuse me. We'll be looking at tree views, which is a way of looking at the activities, detail activities within the header activities by expanding and contracting the header activities. We also will have a timelines by activity showing the beginning or the start and the finish dates for each activity in a graphic format. We'll also have other project reports, and finally we will have project analysis reports. Okay, let's shut that. We go to projects. This is our project master. One line for project 45. We are going to be going into the activities. So in the activities form we have the total activity details here. Just increase that. So that we start off with the total and then we go down through the levels. The header followed by the details, another header followed by detail activities, and then a couple of more detail activities at the end here, which are linked straight to the total. So we're going to be talking about how all of this information is reported. Now, the first thing I want to show you is tree views. Click on tree views. You can view at one time any of the cost components, materials, labour, overhead, subcontract or other, in a tree view. We will look at the total costs. So we have the total cost here, and what it is showing is the contracted headers, just the header totals, header 1, header 2, and then the two activities which are linked to the total directly, which don't have a header. So what we can do with the header one is we can expand it out here to have a look at the detail activities here. If there was a subheader, then that would expand out as well. So that's what the tree views allow you to do. It's a convenient way of looking at the header, contracted header information or totals, and then expanding them out where you want to look at the details in them. So that's the tree view. Next thing I want to look at is the timeline report. Now, all of these activities in here have a start and a finish date. The timeline report will plot each activity as a line with a start and a finish date, and you can specify a period of time within the actual project, not necessarily the project start and finish, and you can specify whether you want to see weeks or months, that the system works out what it thinks it should see. So I've got one of those earlier. I'll just click in here and find it. It's timeline. Now, what we're seeing here for this project is the activities. We're looking only at the lines for detail activities. The headers are shown there, but there is no line for them. So for this particular activity 1, within header 1, we've got a start and a finish date there. Is 61 days in total. That's an elapsed time in that period, and we're showing the full 61 days. So it starts at the 9th of March and ends at the 9th of May, and so on for each of the other detail activities. So that's that report. Next thing I want to show you is the total project activity summary. Now this has a number of formats. First of all, what I'd like to show you is the bottom up one, and that is down here. We'll select that, bottom up here. So what we've got here is, starting at the lowest level, we get the headers and their details shown in thousands of dollars to one decimal place. So header 1 has 2 detail activities, and there they are. Header 2 has 5, and there they are in the subtotal. And then we finally get to the highest level, the total level, where the total activity has two headers, header 1 and header 2, and then two other detail activities attached to it. And then finally we have the project total. Now you'll see here the calculated sales and margins. These costs, total cost of 12016 has resulted in a total targeted sales value of that, and based on the project markups that have been applied to each of the individual components. Then we see so-called actual, which is simply what we've entered in as a total project sales value, so that we can then see the difference between what we should be valuing this project at, namely that, and what we are. In this case it's a positive amount. So that is the bottom-up project reporting, and we have these top-down, indented and cost drivers. So the next one I want to show you is cost drivers by activity. Sorry about that, should have cancelled there. Okay, once again I've pre-done that one. So we're looking at cost drivers here, and what this shows us is for each activity or detail activity within header activity, the details of the cost drivers that have been created for that activity. So we've got bins, doors, windows, quantity there and there and there, and it goes through each detail activity and lists the driver quantities. So this is a convenient way of seeing what driver quantities there are in each activity in the one go. Okay, the next one I want to show you is a detailed cost report. We'll select this activity, detailed activity here. We can see that the total cost is that. We can see the total materials, labour, overhead. But if we want to see in a report what the details of these items are, we simply do report current detail activity, cost details. And we've prepared one earlier. So we'll find that cost report. So here's the activity cost report for activity KP123. Okay, first of all we have the materials, or the bill of materials listed here, each by description, unit of quantity, the driver. Job means it's got no driver really, it means it has a driver quantity of 1, which you see there. Driver unit, each, the usage quantity, the repeat, since you can repeat a usage, and then the result, the net usage in this particular case. 2 by the cost per unit gives you that, and so on. So we get a subtotal for materials. We then move on to subcontracts and other costs. You can see each of those is listed here, whether it be a subcontract or another cost. They all go in under this heading and give us a subtotal for subcontract and other. And finally we have labour, and the labour is shown. So there we go. In this particular case we've got our work centre, the operation, we've got the manning of 6, the driver, job driver, quantity is 1, hours, elapsed hours, the repeats 1, standard hours, efficiency, and rate per hour, cost per hour to give us our labour cost. And then we have the associated manufacturing overhead for that work centre, which is that. So it's 10,900 for labour and 38,900 for overhead, to give us our grand total 5899,494. So what we were doing there was we were expanding out on that. So that's the cost report. Now let's have a look at project analysis very quickly. In project analysis we're attempting to look at the cost components are for all activities. So we're, instead of looking at activities and drilling down into cost components, we're looking at it perhaps the other way. We're looking at the cost components and then going into into activities. So take materials, for example. In here you have all of the materials used in this total project shown by activity and code, usage and total cost. Now you can select from a whole range of criteria if you want to zero in on a particular activity. Say activity 3, no materials used for activity 3, so we'll try activity 4. We know there's something there. Activity 4, select that, and there it is. So then we can apply our reports to the selected items. So let's just go back and select all, and then we have a series of reports. Now we can show the materials by date, accumulated materials by date. This is useful in determining cash flow requirements. Materials by activity to date. Purchase materials by supplier to see what requirements are by supplier. And in fact, I have got one of those already done, so let's have a look at that. We are looking for purchase materials here, and this shows us, first of all, for each supplier, and it shows each activity and of course its date range. So we know that we're going to have to get from this supplier these materials and these dates for these activities. So we have total cost of 3,000 and 2,003, so that's 8,000 and so on. So that brings us down to the total of materials that we need to purchase for this particular item, this particular project. Okay, the next report for materials is, let's see now, accumulated materials. Yes, accumulated materials by date. Okay, so we won't print that now. We'll have a look. Accumulated materials. Accumulated materials. Yeah. Now this report really starts off at the earliest date by activity and builds up, starting with first accumulated, adds another 3,000, adds another 90, adds another 3 million. So you're building up your accumulated material on a date basis so that you can see what's what by date. Okay, so as you can see here, by the 2nd of May, we'll have gone up to 9 million, and by the end of the project we'll be up to our full 10 million. Okay, so that's project materials analysis. We have labour. I'll just show you a couple of reports in labour, and they are, or just one. You can select your criteria again, and we'll select accumulated labour by date. No, we won't print it. Cancel it. Okay, and we'll come down here now and have a quick look at it. Accumulated labour. So once again, here we've got the date range, the activities, the operation, factory, work centre, the driver, manning, hours, efficiency, man hours, labour per hour, and labour cost accumulated. So this is a very useful way of seeing where your labour costs are building up and what's contributing to them over time. So there are other reports there. There are several other reports there, but I won't go into those at the moment. Look at our subcontract. We have likewise the selection criteria. Likewise we have reports. And for subcontract, you can have a look at, say, subcontract by activity. This one here. So we'll go down here and find that. This report here shows for each activity the actual subcontract and other operations that are within that activity, and then by date within the activity to get our totals. Subcontract and other costs. Once again, you can see it by classification, by supplier, and that's that. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is the analysis by shift. These are the shifts that have gone in to have been applied to the project. We can select by a whole bunch of criteria, and the report I want to show there is shifts by activity. So we'll go straight to our pre-prepared list here, and we'll go to shifts by activity here. So here we have each activity and then each shift that's been applied. So you can see the manning of the shifts and the date range that those shifts have been applied to, and the code for and the description of the shift. The labour and the overhead is also shown here to give us our totals at the bottom. Okay, so that really is only a quick look at the extent of reporting that's available in the project cost module in order to shed light on both the amount spent and the timing of amount spent in activities in the project. And that concludes this tutorial.